fans, we are back with a very special, let's call it a mini episode of Bottom Dead Center. I'm glad to be joined back again by Matt Looker. Happy, healthy, and on the road in Connecticut, I am to understand. So lock yourselves up, lock the doors, roll the windows up. Looker's on the loose in Connecticut. And our longtime and very good friend, Brian Manson from Toughest Monster Truck Tour, joining us as well, too. So, Brian, welcome to Bottom Dead Center. We're glad to have you on today.
Hey, guys. Glad to be here.
So I would call you a extremely important but sometimes reclusive personality in the sport. So we appreciate you taking a minute out of your start to the weekend to spend some time with us. I understand you're accomplishing some pretty important work in your shop today.
Well, I've got everything wrapped up from first quarter, both on monster truck side, and we do a lot of dirt work for PBR all over the country, and I've got all my stuff is home and packed away, and all the accounting is done, and so now I'm moving on to my honey-do list and house projects, which have been put off for the last 5 months or so.
Outstanding. Well, I'm holding it down here in Cheyenne. Looker, you're out in Connecticut, you said, as I alluded to. What are you up to this weekend over in Connecticut? Anything cool?
Just taking a little day trip with some friends. Go out here, eat some good food, and I'm actually heading over to Washington, D.C. to visit some family tomorrow night for a couple days as well. So taking a little break this weekend.
Nice little loop on the East Coast there. Are you going to have some New Haven pizza, or is that sacrilegious to an Albany resident?
You know, New York pizza is the king. Anyone in Chicago that feels otherwise, you have no reason to even have an opinion about pizza. If you want to talk about New Haven or Detroit style, we can have a discussion. But actually, I think we're going to go hit up an all-you-can-eat sushi place that looked really good tonight. Being closer to the water,
Nice.
Get some good stuff.
Awesome. So note to everybody in Chicagoland, your pizza is a casserole in Matt Looker's scorebook.
You can call it a casserole, and then it's fine, but just don't call it a pizza.
What did Jon Stewart say? I'm surprised you didn't think to put some fried onions on top of your casserole to complete the dish.
Yeah, that's right.
Nice. So before we get into serious stuff, where do you stand on pizza, Brian? Now that Looker's alienated half the country, you get your turn, and then I'll alienate everybody.
Well, people's minds are going to be blown here, but pizza with no cheese is all fine by me.
That's
I
right.
agree.
Yeah.
I forgot that.
That's a Sicilian pie. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
Okay. Hey,
I was too ignorant to understand the ways of a good tomato pie back in the day, but for a while, Brian and I were spending enough time together at work and on the road and stuff. In the Domino's app, I had a no cheese pie saved. It was like Manson's pie in my Domino's queue. So here's my opinion. I think wood or coal-fired oven pizza is the best, and then I'm pretty open to your topping or your crust or your fermentation of your dough. I will say I do like deep dish Chicago, but I'm fine with not calling it pizza. And I am the one person in a house full of people that like pineapple on pizza. I'm morally against that. So I've decided if you put pineapple on pizza, it is now a flatbread. It is not a pizza.
That's fair. That's fair.
All right. And also St. Louis pizza is better than Chicago pizza. I just want to get that out there too.
Agreed.
All right. Well, very good. We'll dispense with the important talk and get on to less important stuff that's a little more topical. First off, Brian, have you had a chance to check out any of our past episodes of Bottom Dead Center? And are you familiar with our Monster Wars obsession right now?
I'm caught up to the first 3. I did not watch last week with Kohler. So, but I did see someone posted was it Albany Monster Wars where they had the Gravedigger character on the floor for intros. And I watched quite a bit of that. I was really hoping for the Predator guy to show up, but no dice.
That was 92. That was the year before Monster Wars.
Oh.
Yeah. It was like a prototype idea ahead of the TV show.
Okay.
Yeah. That was the 3rd year that they had them in Albany. And I sat on, from that video, the same side, but right at the finish line. And I distinctly remember some parts of that show because the last car in that yellow or green row was the same year, make, and model of the car that we drove. It was a 82 Buick Century. And I remember I was only like...
That's amazing.
4 at the time. And I remember there was a moment where I was like, is that our car? Like, it took me a second. Then I was like, well, Probably not, but as a little kid, there was a moment there where I'm like, how are we getting home, Dad?
They didn't spray paint our car when we weren't looking, did they, Dad?
Right.
What was it
The
with
characters
1990?
existed before the TV show?
What's
The
that?
Gravedigger one for sure. The Gravedigger character, I think, debuted or a prototype of that at some of those fall whatever 92 shows. But I don't know when the other characters debuted, but I know I've seen some clips of like Uniondale and I want to say Houston maybe from Monster Wars, where you could see there was like little, bar band size stages near the starting lines, and the trucks that had mascots present, they'd come out and Gravedigger'd send them with the big sickle and stuff like that. So,
I
I
did
mean,
not know that.
cheese on pizza.
I assumed that some TV producer came up with that whole thing,
Yeah.
but they existed before.
Yeah, apparently it was a pretty big component of the whole deal from the start, which makes it even more kind of sad that the series didn't continue. But now's a perfect time to introduce Brian and any of our new listeners. And I'm going to point at the screen and make it appear. It has been 0 days since a Monster Wars incident on Bottom Dead Center counter. It's been reset. We were at 5 days and we've made it back to 0. So we're trying to keep it as close to 0 here on BDC as we can. So anyways, what is it with 1992 and seeing your family's vehicles potentially being crushed, Looker? Because that same year I was at Kemper Arena in Kansas City for a USA Motorsports show, and the 1976 Chevy Malibu that my grandmother had just traded in on a very upscale 1989 Pontiac Grand Am. This 76 Malibu was in the crush car stack. It had the Royals bumper sticker and the window sticker or something like that from the Purina dog food company she worked at, to let you park in the lot. And I remember walking the floor during the pit party with my mom, and my mom's like, "Oh my God, that's your grandma's car right there." So we have a picture of ourselves next to the car, and then of course, Bigfoot, Carolina Crusher, and Four Wheel Crazy made quick work of the rusted piece of crap that thing was. So
Kyle,
that's a golden year for.
Were you with us the year that we did the lone car getting crushed in intros?
I don't think so. Did you do that at every stop? I don't remember that.
We did it we only did it 1 year, but we did it everywhere. And after the pit party cleared out, we would just set one lone crush car in the middle of the floor, drop the lights around it, and then we selected Dale Girding to do the honors because he would hate doing it the most. And then Scott Dubler and I would concoct a backstory for this car. Sometimes it was just all BS, but many times we would rifle through the glove box and find, Jim and Sally Sue bought this car new in 1989 from such and such dealership, and they drove it to Vegas and back, or whatever crap. We would come up with a whole paragraph. And I forget where it fell in intros, but midway through this story about this car, Dale Girding would fire up Big Dog from back in the corner, blast it, and just obliterate this car. And then it would go into a video and all the rest of the stuff, and intros would carry on. But we loved it for the nostalgia of it and the BS and the calmness. Yeah. There was this car just sitting there and everything was calm, and Scott was telling you a story about this family that went on vacation in it, and then Dale Girding would just blast it to oblivion.
Was it painted, or did it look like it was a regular car?
We would not paint that car so that it was just sitting out there. The only times that it didn't work out well was when Dale Girding didn't blast it into oblivion hard enough. But he figured it out after a couple times that happened.
That's amazing. Looker and I guarantee you both, our wheels are spinning in our announcer brains of like, a God-fearing family of 6 was conceived over the course of 7 years in the back seat of this car. Exactly. And you're like, oh no.
There was a couple of pretty good stories, and there was a couple versions that we decided probably we shouldn't tell this version that we just made up to the public.
Did you ever find anything in the glove box that made you change the story of the car because it was so bad you couldn't talk about it?
No, I don't think so. But there was plenty of fiction that came out of the whole thing.
Looker, you were going to say something there?
I was going to say, I've countless shows when I've been announcing, I'll waste if I have to waste time, I'll make up some story about the crush car, or like do a PSA about how y'all need to move your motorhome or whatever. Just it's fun to add little BS things like that to a show. It kind of, you get a few laughs out of people, and what's that, quarter of 0.5% of people found it funny, but that's all that matters, right?
That's all that matters. Brian, that while we're just bench racing before we get into more proper storytelling here, your shows, I feel like, have always been a home for some of this creativity that people like us have that's rooted in not only our senses of humor, but we're good monster truck fans. And of course, that brings me to my number one highlight as an announcer. And that was, can't even tell the story without laughing, the Transaurus or Megasaurus, whichever one we had in North Charleston, where we were obsessed with that movie Strange Wilderness and the shark scene, where the voiceover goes when the shark is on screen.
Yes.
So if you still find some fan's video of North Charleston while the dinosaur is eating the car, it roars its mouth open, the chunk of car falls out, they wiggle the bottom jaw to like shake the debris from the car loose, and I got on the microphone and went, oh, and you can hear my stupid overdub echoing over the soundtrack through this old arena. And I don't know, where else do you go with your career after something that magnificent?
Absolutely.
Classic times. That was Monster Nation back then is what your tour was called, and your toughest monster truck tour now. But before we get into modern times with your series and your other event work too, I want to talk about, for the folks that don't know at home, give us a little backstory of kind of how you came up as a fan, where you grew up going to shows and stuff.
I just caught the bug when I was a little kid. I was at a little bit of a disadvantage to all of you guys that got to see way cooler stuff in eastern Iowa. All we had was Beckley in Cedar Rapids every like January, and then for just a handful of years, Darnell still did the truck pull with 2-3 monster trucks in the Unidome in Cedar Falls. So I got those two if I was lucky. And then it was TNN Trucks and Tractor Power on Sunday mornings. And that's about all I got until I got old enough and I was able to talk my dad into driving me the 2.5 hours to go to USA Motorsports in Des Moines. So
Nice.
Did that quite a few years. I was there for the very first TNN broadcast with the bulldozer with the horns going straight up. And then once I got my driver's license at 15 or 15 and a half or something, then the floodgates were open and I was going all over the place. So I would drive to Indiana and go to some shows with Paul Schaefer in the summertime. I rode around with Andy Hoffman for a while. So yeah, well, once I had wheels, then it was a different story, and I got out and saw a bunch of different stuff. But it's interesting that the region or the area you grow up in kind of funnels your monster truck knowledge, because I don't even think I knew Monster Jam existed for a long time, because all I was being fed was Penda on Trucks and Tractor Power, and then these oddball trucks that I would see at the Beckley show or whatever, real small fairground show would come around. It wasn't till I drove to Minneapolis to the Metrodome before I even saw a Monster Jam show, and that would have been late '90s, mid '90s, probably something like that. So
That's a really good point you bring up, and I mentioned something kind of similar in a past episode. It might have been this last one with Frank, but growing up in Missouri until '92, had access to pretty good shows, as you alluded to. But then there was like this dark era from whatever, like mid '92 to like '98 when we moved out west here to Wyoming. We didn't have cable TV. We lived west of Cheyenne, out in the sticks. We had like one or two channels, no monster trucks, no internet yet. So I didn't really know a hell of a lot. And I think we went to like one or two shows, let's say, including one at the Casper Events Center where you guys do shows now, which we'll touch on that building here in a little bit. But that was a Beckley show back then. So not exactly, the pinnacle of whatever was happening in the industry. And then I got my grandma in Kansas City to start recording Monster Jam episodes, Motor Madness at the time, on VHS tapes and mailing me a tape when it was
Yeah.
full. So I'd have 4 or 6, with commercials and everything. And I was like, they're painting all the cars now? Who is this truck? Where's Bigfoot? Mountaineer? What? There was a lot of questions to fill in. So when we finally got internet access in the late 90s, lo and behold, I find this website right away called Monster Zone, right? That was your site. So tell us, how did Monster Zone kind of come about?
You're testing my memory here now.
Already.
So before Monster Zone, there was Truck World.
Yep.
That was Dwayne Elliott and
Eric
Huntoon,
Stern.
right? Eric Stern, yep. But before that, it was the USA Motorsports website had a kids club, which just happened to have a message board on it. It was like they just bought a package website deal, and the message board was part of it, and they never intended it for it to be the central location for monster truck information, but it happened. And so there was this kids club message board, and that was the thing that started it first. And then John Seesock started a chat on his website on like Friday nights or Sunday nights or something. And then there was Truck World, and then there was the Mayhem message board, and it's one of its iterations, and then through all of that, I don't remember exactly how it all happened, but Andrew Palochko and I thought, wouldn't it be cool if there was a monster truck site that actually had news, like actual, current news, results, what's happening, stuff like that. And we were just kids at the time, but we thought it was cool to talk to all these monster truck owners and drivers and kind of be in the know of what was happening. So we made this website, and whichever one of us would go to shows, we would post the results, or we would call somebody, just hound monster truck drivers on Monday mornings, which I'm sure they hated because they're trying to fix their stuff and get ready for the next one. And then we would even find phone numbers for old guys and call them up and just do I think we called it spotlight, and just ask them about what they did, how they got into it, what they're doing now, all that sort of thing. And we did that for a couple years, I think. And then we both started to kind of get busy and do our own things and move away from it. But for a little while, it was cool because there was actual, current monster truck news being posted weekly that I don't think had really existed up until that point.
I think, so Truck World was vitally important when Monsters Monthly dropped. I mean, you were clicking refresh every day waiting to see when it would drop.
Absolutely.
And when it did, it was never long enough because it was so good. Like, you just were craving information. And then same with Monster Zone. It was like, what's updating? And then, I like to think that kind of, what Sean Hancock started with Monster Style, and I got on board with him really early on that. I mean, we kind of launched that project. It was his project, but we were so side by side for that first, year or whatever, because you guys had gotten busy. So we sort of filled the void of Monster Style. And then when we all got busy, Ross and Monster Blog really took off. And I don't even know that there is a version of any of that now, or needs to be, because the internet it's a rife on social media with so many different pages and stuff. But your site, Monster Zone, was right around the time that I gained internet access as like a 6th or a 7th grader probably. And I remember getting in so much trouble with my mom because I was at her work after school. I got on Monster Zone and was so enamored with your guys' random picture gallery. You could just click an arrow and boom, a random picture of a truck. Boom, a random picture of a truck. And I printed like 40 pages of just one picture on a whole sheet of paper at, 72 DPI, a 640 by 640 JPEG. And she came in and I had drained her printer in her office of ink thanks to you. So, appreciate that. So you start driving around and you're getting involved with Hoffman and Paul Schaefer and stuff. So how do you start carving out a real workplace in the industry instead of just going shows?
I never really had an intention of, what I never had a plan of what I wanted to do. I just knew that I loved monster trucks, and everything else was boring. So that's what I wanted to do. I never knew much about the mechanics of them. I learned all that little by little. Um, and I never had a burning desire to be a driver. Um, I tried it out a couple times, but I found that what I really enjoyed was putting all the pieces of a puzzle together to make the show happen, and take what you have to work with and make it the best possible show you can out of the ingredients that you have. So that's kind of what I landed on and enjoy the most is that part of it.
So you don't start a promotion company overnight, obviously. So how do you kind of cut your teeth into that side of the business rather than
Um,
driving?
how did well I in traveling around with it's kind of like the answer that you give anybody when they ask how do you get into monster trucks. You start at the bottom and you get your foot in the door. So just in being around with these guys, opportunities came up to help run a show here or help build a track there or whatever. George Carpenter was a really big help for me. I met him somewhere, running around with some of these guys in the summer, and he kind of took me by his side, and I helped him. I would go out and for a couple weeks in the summer and help him drive Megasaurus at shows, and actually before that, even I was at Virginia Beach with Andy Hoffman, and Andy had a bunch of guys with him, and I just ended up over with George, and pretty soon I'm up there on the steps, and I'm the one calling the show and getting tough trucks to the line and whatever. And so things just have their way of happening. But now George Carpenter is probably the one that taught me the most about producing shows and doing it the right way and doing it safe, all that sort of thing. So yeah, it's crazy because I'm a nostalgic guy about monster trucks in general, but not myself. So thinking back about all this, I should write this stuff down because if I can't remember it now, I'm definitely not going to remember it years down the road.
Well, that's part of what we're trying to do with Bottom Dead Center, and that was something that Matt and Cody and Matt Eisen, Frank, we've all talked about as we have people on. There's a ton of important and really interesting stories out there, and we know we have our own weird stories, so we know there has to be a lot of others out there, and of course that's why we love hearing from somebody like yourself. Other people, I mean, don't get me wrong, if Dennis Anderson ever wants to come on the show, of course we're going to have him,
Right.
but we all know his story really well compared to a lot of folks. So hearing yours is going to be outstanding for everybody to learn more about that. And so, Looker, I'm going to throw it back to you here in a second, but I want to bring up the period of time where I met you, Brian, as you were doing show production stuff. And I think that was probably about the time, and I could be off by just a couple of years, but I really feel like you were starting to rise to a really high level of operations on the independent show side. So 2007, 2008, Major League Monster Trucks and the Monster Truck Challenge when we met. So how did you arrive now at what were some of the biggest shows ever at the time?
So I did a winter with Bobby Holman driving his Godzilla truck, and then from there I ended up going to work for Beckley for a short time, traveling around doing some of his shows. I did his website. I booked trucks and whatever for a short time, and then I don't remember if it was Rich Schaefer or who it was, but MLMT or not MLMT, but Terry Dickerson, Milestone Motorsports, was just spending a bunch of money and putting on shows all over the place. Monster Truck Challenge is what they were going by, and they needed a production guy, a guy that could build tracks and go around and make shows happen. So I moved to California, to Southern California, and went to work for Milestone Motorsports for a little while. We did monster trucks in Bakersfield and a couple dirt tracks in Texas. I remember Vegas at the dirt track in Vegas. We also did a whole series of just freestyle motocross shows, which was a whole arena production. It was filmed by ESPN2 and stuff. So I moved a lot of dirt in and out of arenas for that. You could kind of see the writing on the wall that a lot more money is being spent than is coming in early on with that. So I kind of started looking around for other stuff to do, and then shortly thereafter, MLMT came about with Joe Froome and he hired Rich Schaefer, who brought me in, and a whole bunch of other people to make these really crazy shows happen at these big NASCAR tracks. So then we did MLMT for 2 years, maybe. Maybe there was a third, I can't remember. But big, crazy tracks at NASCAR facilities, and the floodgates were open. How much dirt do you want? How many junk cars? How many buses? What do you guys want? And you'll have it. And we took it all and made some big, crazy tracks. And those were some fun times. And if I was talking about the right ingredients before, not all the right ingredients were there for that thing to really take off. But if there would have been, man, it would have been so cool for that thing to take flight. Then it fizzled out, and then Rich decided to go out on his own for a little while and try to make it work under his own name with some backing from the financial people behind MLNT. And we did that for a couple of years. We went up to Weedsport, New York, a bunch of times, in Middletown.
That's when I met you guys. Was
Yep.
St. Louis Gateway.
Gateway, yeah.
Rich had brought me in to do kind of color commentary, pit reporting type stuff opposite of George Eisenhart at that show, which that show was a big break for me as far as getting to know Rich and start working with him, and then with you, but
Yep.
also with my affiliation with Eisenhart prior to his passing. So that was a big weekend. But it's amazing to me that you never did track building or event production for something like Monster Jam, because if you look at the quality of shows and tracks you've built and produced over the year, you'd swear that whatever that company running the show was had just cherry picked you right away from their dirt crew, which I think is a compliment to you on how good your stuff looks.
Well, I appreciate that, and there had been an offer or two over the years, but we were having a good time, doing our own thing, and sort of having some more creativity than being under the thumb of a certain way, or a certain way things ever have to be done or look or whatever. So I just never really had the need to go that route. But I don't take anything away from any of those guys. The fact that they can pull off 8, 10, 14 shows a weekend, and they'll all be the same quality, that's amazing. We do one on rare occasion. We've done 2 a weekend, but it takes a pretty good group of guys and a lot of work to make them happen, and make them look good. So hats off to all those guys on the road for Monster Jam, because that's crazy, the amount of work that they pull off.
When I was at their Denver arena show most recently in February of this year, I was struck by just how much manpower they deployed to just an arena show. And there's not even a crush car in the building.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just for some dirt in the middle of the building. Now I'm marginalizing what their show is. I'm not saying nothing about the quality of the show. I'm just saying a lot of people in the building. And I think back to doing shows with you and Ryan Seddon and Gordon Both and Scotty Dubler at those. And I think I just listed our event crew.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that 5-6 man roll call. I mean, that's all there was. Sometimes we had Andrew Pellegrini there just to act as our team punching bag. But then, yeah, we didn't have a lot of people. And I gather you probably still don't have an unlimited supply of manpower either.
No, we run lean and mean, and I try to find people that can bring multiple talents to the table, so that we have redundancy there. If one guy can't make it that weekend, well, he's not the only one that can build the track, or he's not the only one that can paint the cars, or I even try to have somebody else that can announce if something were to happen. But yeah, we're doing all this stuff with 5, 6, 7 guys total. But it's 5, 6, 7 guys that love it. They grew up with it. It's their passion, and they're there to bust ass and make the show as best as it possibly can, versus it, just being a paycheck or just a job and get in, get out, and move on to the next one.
Well, that kind of brings me back to you, Looker. You like all of us, on the show, are kind of a utility infielder. We all try and cover a lot of bases and whatever we do in the industry or even outside of it. So how did you meet Brian, and kind of what is your role still today when you do shows with Brian?
So back in about 2017. I was kind of starting to move away from doing Monster Jam stuff. I had done Beckley shows like Brian in my first part of my career when I lived in Texas. I was kind of starting to move away from Monster Jam. Just they were requiring more time to be out on the road. I have a daughter at home. It just wasn't really my thing. Nothing against them. And I worked with Elliot Miller a lot, did throwdown shows at that time. And he was like, Brian Wagner, who also used to work for Brian Manson here, he was going to start to take a little bit. He had a kid that year, right, Brian? Was that why he stepped away?
That sounds right.
I think that was it.
Little by little, he was assembling his own schedule of events also. So we knew the writing was on the wall that eventually he was going to have enough of his own stuff that he wouldn't have time to do ours anymore.
And I think that particular year there was going to be a block where he wasn't going to be there for like 2 months, and I think that was a child. But whatever the reason was, Elliot kind of put me in touch with Brian. He was like, Matt's a longtime fan. He's passionate about it. All those things, like you said about everyone in the crew. That was 2017 or 18. I can't remember which year was the first year. But yeah, we just kind of went from there. I did a couple of years, I guess you'd call it full-time, and then got a little busy with my work at home, and I kind of do 2 to 3 shows a year depending on staff needs. Like Brian said, it's lean and mean, which allows you to spend money where you need to other places where you're not spending it on staff. And yeah, just filling in when people can't make it. I try to do at least one a year, or at least one a first quarter, I should say.
I have to say, my experience working for you, Brian, I mean, that is exactly what you're talking about, is taking somebody and developing them maybe from no production skill set, but you found somebody, let's say, that's got some interest in the business or some historical appreciation or is just a really hardcore fan, but you've taken a lot of us and, you've not just showed us how to paint crush cars because that's easy, but you've made sure we know how to clean the sprayer up properly when we're done so it works the next weekend, or to tape plastic properly so that way when, a jet quad goes around the arena or somebody, like Hawkins is blasting around the arena, the skirt on all the retractables doesn't blow up, and make the show look bad. I mean, your attention to detail, it's pretty wild for me that I left working for the Hall brothers and almost immediately found myself working, PRN for you, because that level of attention to detail is so similar between that organization and yours, where it, perfection's not exactly what you're driving towards, but it does really need to be really good, really sharp, really buttoned up. And, I think about the multi-role stuff you talk about. I mean, you'd have Ryan and I doing a lot of that kind of pre-production stuff. And then during the show, he's flagging quads and staging trucks and overseeing the FMX lander or launch ramp getting moved. And I'm co-announcing with Scotty Dubler. And I even remember one time in Beaumont when Bobo, shout out Ben Winslow, was driving for Buenon Nagati, and the throttle linkage popped off the injector hat on sudden impact, and he couldn't get the truck to go anywhere because it was just stuck. And I'm down there trying to talk to you, talk to the people, and then I see the linkage is off. So it's just like, hold on, everybody. And I don't remember if I said that to the people or if I said it to you. I might have said it to everybody on both channels. And I jumped up, popped her back on, gave him the thumbs up, and he went out and drove like, an asshole for the freestyle. And I loved it. And to me, that's the ethos of your business. And I gather it is still the way today.
Absolutely. And really what it boils down to is it's more fun that way. If you get to wear different hats and do different stuff. I have never, ever been the guy that wants to go up in the booth on the 4th floor and just beckon orders over the radio for 4 hours, if you include the pit party and walk in and showtime. And nobody wants to listen to that guy anyways, right? So I would put me down in the mix in the blood and sweat, and Kyle, that's a perfect story. And if I had more time, I could probably think of a dozen times that stuff just like that has happened, where you just happen to have the right person in the right place that has the knowledge, to look and say, oh, I can fix this right now. I don't need to talk to anybody. I don't need to get approval. I don't need to whatever. But we all saw you down there. We all knew what you were going to do, So yeah, those are the, I don't want to call them magic moments, but when you have a group of guys that all clicks and works together and loves what they're doing, the end product just happens. It just comes out good.
That's what I meant to say before. One of the things that I really liked when I started doing your shows is there's no one really calling the show. And if you've ever worked a monster truck show, there's usually somebody saying, all right, fire that truck up, whatever. Everybody on our staff, Basil, you, me, whoever else is at the show, everything just kind of runs smoothly and well thought out. It's a well-oiled machine, and I really like that, everyone just does their own thing and everyone knows what needs to be done. So you don't need to call and say, hey, do you want the truck now? Or, you know what I mean? It's just everything moves and it looks good to the people. And, we all think on most weekends, it works pretty good too.
I don't know how you handle freestyle judging now, Brian, but I know in my time with you, that was always pretty fun because we'd often just be radioing up to you what we thought the score was. And then you or Ryan or somebody was having to do some kind of quick mental math on the go and then fire it back to Scotty or I what to tell everybody the score was. I'm not a mental math guy. So that was a tough one for me if you bounced them back to me and I had to add that stuff up.
I have been trying for years to get myself out of the freestyle judging position because I hate it. It's you're in a position where you have to make an opinionated judgment in a matter of seconds because whoever's announcing wants that number right now.
Yeah.
If you wait 5 seconds after that truck's time is over, he's already on the radio. I need to score. So you're throwing out an opinion, of what this truck just did right in front of you. And no one's ever going to totally agree with it because it's literally an opinion. And I will defend our freestyle judging system purely based off of years and years of data that I've collected. Say what you want about it. I usually do one or two of the four elements, and then the guy on the other side of the arena will do another one, and somebody else will do time or whatever. So if you look at all the numbers over the years, and you can look at averages and all sorts of things, it's actually very, very consistent. Part of that goes back to the fact that we're in arenas and the tracks are always quite similar. But it's very, very consistent. And one thing that is a good sign for the monster truck world and drivers and their ability is wow factors. Used to, a good wow factor score for an arena freestyle used to be 3, 4, 5 was pretty decent, because you're talking about a run that's going to have 9 or 10 hits in it, and if 3 or 4 or 5 of those are good, cool things, that was a good run. And I would always get shit because people thought that was not an impressive wow factor. I said, well, it was though. You out of 9 hits, you did 3 or 4 cool things. That's pretty good. And whoever my announcer was would usually not like throwing out wow factor scores of less than 5 because it just didn't seem impressive. And I don't disagree, but I'm glad we did because we had a lot of 8s this winter. And you're talking about a guy that went out and made almost every hit count. Tyler Groth, I think, did it 4 times where he had a wow factor score of 8, which is literally almost every hit he did something cool that made you sit back in your seat and go, wow, that was crazy. So I'll take all the shit for freestyle scoring. But if you look at all the data and the numbers over the years, I think we've got an actually pretty accurate system. And at the end of the day, the individual scores don't really matter as long as the right guy wins. And I think we're 90% or better on the right guy winning.
Yeah.
That's the most articulate explanation I've ever heard of anyone's freestyle judging system. So I commend you. I don't think I hear the word data used very often talking about freestyle judging, where like the data I want to know is if you do 2 nights somewhere, I want you to have the building do $5 beers on Friday night and $10 beers on Saturday. Let the fans judge, and let's see which crowd was more involved. I'm going to
Right.
bet on the $5 beer night.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, another
Looker, oh, sorry.
on
Go
that
ahead.
on that topic of scoring, Scott Heaton, a lot of times, if it's a low score, he'll just tell the crowd, tell them what you think, and they'll boo that they don't
Yep.
like the score. And I love that because
Yeah.
it just means that they're engaged, that they're paying attention, and they care what's happening out there. So cheering or booing, I don't care either way, but it just means that they like what they're watching and they're engaged and they're paying attention.
No, that's awesome. You want to see people a little emotionally invested in what you have going on out there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The legitimacy of scoring at a toughest show is unmatched anywhere. I would say when I'm doing a throwdown show, I try to do the same, not to compare it, but the way that you guys score, I really like to put in other shows that I do because, this guy's momentum was a 9, but he only ran for 30 seconds. So his time score is low. It's very, like you said, data driven, and here it is. It is what it is. Wow factor obviously is more of an opinion, but a lot of the scoring is you did half the clock, so you got a 5 out of 10 in that section. And I really like that. And the lower scores, I'm always okay with that as long as it's fair, because Brian, at your shows, any truck can take the win from first out freestyle, last, it don't matter. So if, say, Jerry Beck goes out and does a decent wheelie in wheelie contest, which is scored basically the same freestyle with the way we score it. If he does a decent wheelie and you give him a 4, there's a good chance he's going to get beat. It don't matter that it's only a 4. And if the 4 was the best wheelie of the night, then 4 is going to be the winner.
I think that has a motivating factor in a driver's mind too. Like if you got a guy that's like, God damn it, I am tired of getting 4s. I'm going to go out and try and get a 6 or a 7 this weekend and just redeem myself a little bit. I think that's a good motivating factor. And I mean, as we all know, this isn't an open, qualifying business. This is, you got to get booked on the show and you got to run hard to get booked at the best levels. So in some ways, I feel like you're looking out for your guys and girls that you've booked to drive because you're making sure to incentivize and encourage them to make sure they're keeping the edge sharp.
Absolutely. And it's cool when some of these younger guys will actually come and ask. They're like, how come my whatever score was so low? And then you can tell them, and you actually see improvement. I give guys advice to pay attention to what Dan Runta used to do all the time. He was a master of getting consistently high scores and everything because he just figured it out. Use of track. He would go out there and make a lap on the outside, go through the middle, and turn around and go the other direction. And within the first less than half of his freestyle, he'd already hit everything. So he had all of his use of track points done in the first half of his freestyle, and then he just went on and did whatever he wanted the rest of the time.
That's a great point, and that's an underrated freestyle driver there too. And I mean, now granted, it depended on what Dan's truck was at that period in history, what the weekend situation. There was a lot of variables. If Dan was at a jamboree trying to win racing, he was going to be smart and conservative in freestyle because you got a really long weekend ahead of you. But if he needs to stick the ass of it in the FMX hill at Beaumont to make Bigfoot shine, he's going to do that. And that guy's, he's like he's like a Fernando Alonso or a like a Dale Earnhardt Jr. as far as a driver. His toolbox was so big and so deep that whatever he needed at that given moment, he had it on available if he wanted to use it.
Yeah, after years of having Dan on at our shows, I could tell I knew what he was going to do just right before he fired it up. I'm like, he's just gonna go out here and lay it down and do a conservative run and get all of his points, or if he would drive that truck to the exact level necessary to make sure that Bigfoot was well represented. But he's not going to wad it up just because, but he's going to make sure that people knew Bigfoot was there and probably was the winner.
Yeah, I think that's such a accurate representation of his driving, and it's certainly like he didn't have 21 by the time I left there, but he'd been in 18 and he was doing a really good job in 18. And you just think, man, that guy should have had a truck like that for the last 10 years, because you think about just how much further that guy could have already gone with an exceptional career. But, your events have provided a great opportunity for veterans like him to showcase that depth of skills, but also you've had a lot of newcomers or unfamiliar faces. And, one that jumps out in my mind is Jamie Garner. I remember when he was kind of getting his start, he had bought the Perrins' concussion chassis, Little Miss Dangerous, called it overboard. And you were one of the first, higher level shows that was using him. And then now look, it's a multi-generational team. His kid wins, World Finals racing. I mean, it's got to make you kind of proud to see some of the teams that have come and gone through your shows, in addition to the ones that are there now, of course.
Yeah, there's been so many. There's been a lot of guys that used us as a stepping stone to get to bigger things, which we're totally cool with that. We want to see everybody grow and expand. Just this winter, Jared Smith driving Cybertruck, he did great. I had a little bit of reservations about him going indoors this soon in his driving career, but after watching him last summer, we did it, and he did an awesome job. He listened. He took it slow. He got used to driving indoors. He got used to the truck. And then you could see him just start to get comfortable and not be concerned anymore about being indoors and get used to the truck. And by the fourth weekend out, he was just doing great. I think we gave him Rising Star and Rookie of the Year this year because he does such a great job of listening to everybody. He had Darren Basil there along his side, which was great. I would trust Darren Basil to teach anybody how to drive a monster truck any day.
Yep.
And yeah, he did great. But there's been a lot of guys like him that started out with us and have gone on and done really cool things.
Well, you talk about guys coming and going and doing, big things after, but there's a guy doing pretty big things on your tour right now, and he happens to be your now 2-time consecutive defending champion for Toughest Monster Truck Tour, Jerry Beck, with Dirt Crew. And I want you and Looker both to kind of take a turn here and just explain to me the growth you've seen from him, not only as a driver, but a team owner, a business owner, and just how the hell that guy so fearlessly flies that thing so high at your arena shows, because that's like stadium air in a hockey arena.
Well, I met Jerry, I don't know how many years ago, but we were at the Badlands, an off-road park in Indiana. And Wagons was doing a show for this off-road park, and Jerry lives right there. He's good friends with the guy that owns the Badlands. And he had just bought what became Quad Chaos from Joey. And so I was just there helping Wagner out, build a truck and stuff. And we're like, all right, who are these local guys? This guy bought a truck and spent more money on rebuilding this old truck than it would have cost to just build a new one. But the more we were around him, and he had Aaron Kane at the time working for him, and we're like, these seem like pretty good guys. And they had one truck that running that weekend, and Aaron Kane was not scared of anything. He would point that truck at anything and just send it. So got to know him there a little bit, and they had big plans. And Jerry's a guy that when he gets an idea in his head and he wants to do something, there's almost no stopping it. And sure enough, they already had Quad, and they had already bought the second truck, which would become Dirt Crew, but at the time it had a body on it for the Badlands park. But he talked a big game, and we were all kind of a little hesitant because we're like, oh, who's this guy? Is he really going to do everything he says he's going to do? Is he going to be around in a year or whatever? And man.
Which, not to interrupt, but that's a fair question to ask in monster trucks.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like,
you run.
We've all seen the hot flashes come and go like that.
Tire kickers and wannabes, and guys that have big aspirations, but not the resources to make it happen. But Jerry proved he'll prove anybody wrong. If you say you can't do something, he'll figure out a way to do it. And he has grown his team into something pretty damn impressive. Not only do they run good, they hold together, they don't break a lot of parts, but what's more impressive to me is that they're marketable. They're not boring monster trucks with truck bodies. They're unique. They appeal to kids. They sell merch, which benefits everybody. Promoters want marketable trucks that kids are going to be attracted to. And if you're going to run at the level that Jerry wants his trucks to run at, they've got to sell merch. They got to support themselves. You got to multiple streams of income to make this thing work. So it's not just the know-how of how to build trucks and maintain them and run them, but he also has a vision for how to come up with an idea that kids will love. And I think he's knocked it out of the park on quad, dirt crew, blockhead, Dozer, Maximus. We were shocked this winter at how many people love this Cybertruck. And that was something that he threw out, I think, early fall. He's like, what about a Cybertruck? I'm like, Jerry, you're trying to build another truck. You're trying to do this, trying to do this. You're not going to have time. He's like, I'll make it happen. It's just 10. I'm like, okay. And we had a Cybertruck. So, and people loved it, believe it or not. So who knows what he'll come up with next. But as far as, from a promoter standpoint, you couldn't ask for a better team to support your events than what Jerry's put together.
It's awesome. Looker, give me a little insight from your standpoint as a announcer, radio operator, that kind of stuff of what you see going with that team.
I would say if you had to sum it up in a sentence, he is the most underrated monster truck driver, owner, builder in, I would say, bar none. I'm trying to think of other people because I don't want to leave anyone else out because a lot of people work real hard on monster trucks in general. I first met him. He was, I guess, what you call a wow factor at one of the Soaring Eagle shows. He had the Badlands body on what became Dirt Crew, and he got it. He came out for a sky wheelie between racing passes and got it stuck vertical. And that was kind of my first time meeting Jerry. And like I said, when I was talking to Elliot and he was, getting me hooked up with Brian, we used Jerry's trucks at his shows, and he's like, Matt, you don't understand. They run this hard in hockey arenas. And if you've never seen a toughest show in trucks, it's not just Jerry, but he's one of the best at it. I mean, it's no lie to say stadium level air in an arena off some of those ramps, just, I don't know, 20, 30 feet in the air, at least 30 feet in the air. And the other thing is he builds all this stuff himself. He did have the chassis built, but he rehabs them. And Brian, when you were talking about him taking this old junk and piling money into it, one of the most recent chassis he had built, he had them use square tubing for the main frame rails, which, anything about monster trucks, which I'm not a fabricator, but if you know anything about these chassis, square tubing is kind of a relic, but he likes it, and he puts the time into it. And about those bodies and those truck designs, he builds them himself in his garage. Like the quad body was built out of plywood in his garage. And I mean, and not only just the designs of the truck and the themes, but if you've ever seen him work on the trucks, when something breaks, he doesn't just try to make it better, but he will engineer a new design for it for the next time that it breaks, whether it's a weather pack for a rear steer system so it's just a plug and play type deal, or up to, I would say probably you correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but I'd say probably his biggest, I don't know, achievement's the right word, but those semi-puller diffs in his trucks that he still has not broken one yet to this day, the way that he drives. Oh, wow. He's had them, 5 years? I think.
Yeah, he found these giant diffs that he put in the rear ends of all the trucks, and I still don't think he's broken a component or two, but not the actual ring and pinion. And there's a lot of guys that have switched to that now. I think Patrick's even making a housing that fits it. But if you were trying to compare him to somebody, Looker, and the only one that really sticks out in my mind would be Bill Payne, as far as somebody that has come up with incredible ideas, but also is not afraid to just reinvent the wheel or just completely tear something apart and rebuild it and figure out how to make it work better. Bill kind of does his own thing out on the West Coast there, but mad respect for both those guys because they just never quit. There is no status quo with them. They're always pushing forward. And to loop back around, uh, aside from Jerry's whole operation, he is an incredible just driver himself, and I don't think he gets enough credit for that. He has talked about retiring his 1992 Nightmare dump truck that he's got, and we won't let him because we're afraid that he might not be as good if he's driving something new. So he's still rocking what I believe it's Gary Bauer's Nightmare 2
That's right.
with the top half cut off and a new cage put on it, and then later on the bottom half cut off. So basically, the frame
there's a little bit of nightmare left.
A little bit of nightmare left right through the middle, but yeah, we keep telling him no, that he's got to keep the original dirt crew.
Yeah,
It's pretty amazing. We are in a sport where you can pull that off. I mean,
Yeah,
there's some pretty old irons still running around out there that even I was driving old trucks when I was driving 12 years ago, and I'm like, one of those is still out there. Like, these things hang around.
Avenger 2 is still winning Monster Jam Stadium freestyles. So
Yeah,
there's a lot of old stuff out there still doing more than just kicking around.
I'd love for
for
somebody
sure.
to roll into Daytona or Talladega with a 1986 tag on a frame. Like,
Yeah.
well, that's just the frame, though. I put a new cage on and new
Yeah.
this and new everything.
We
Yeah.
cut the whole front clip off over in
Yeah.
'96, so we're current from then to now. We're good.
Right.
No, I got you. So a couple more questions I want to ask real quick before we get out of here with you. We always say like, oh, we'll do a quick interview with somebody, and then we just have such a damn good time, and the questions and the conversation keep flowing. So I thank you for that. But you've mentioned Brian Wagner and the All Star Tour. You mentioned Elliott Miller and Throwdown. You guys cross pollinate some, or at least you have in the past. I know from just a distant perspective, it almost feels like Throwdown season is sometimes an extension of where the toughest season kind of ended on the indoor side, just in terms of mentality and appreciation for quality of shows. Do you see it that way at all, or do you guys feel hyper independent from each other?
Oh no, there's a lot of I don't know if collaboration is the right word, but we talk to each other all the time. We compare notes of, hey, I'm going to use this guy, or what do you think about this guy? But really, all it boils down to is we are just fans, from day one, and we want to see a show that we would want to see if we were sitting in the stands. So I think that's all that you can ask for out of a promoter is somebody that just cares enough to put forth the extra 10%, to make it as good as you can make it with what you've got to work with. And I think that's really where the three of them, coincide. So, and I'll go to a throwdown or two for Elliott when he needs me in the summer. He's filled in for me before many, many times at Toughest. And Wagons is the same way. We just have the same mentality of how to produce shows and what we want to see. So that's the comparisons between the three. But yeah, we're all in the same boat. We'd all do anything that we needed to help each other.
Looker, if you draw a Venn diagram of promoters that you can work for, I mean, your name, my name, Brian's name, Elliott's name, Wagon, we all overlap so much with each other through different periods of time. But, I want to get your perspective on it. I just am struck in an industry that has been full of cutthroat promoters and undercutting from teams to each other and all these negative things that we don't want to dwell on. These three promotion groups seem to operate semi-independent from each other, but with so much respect and in their own little areas of responsibility. And then, like Brian just said, helping each other out when you get in a bind. I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Because I just think that's so healthy and important for independent teams of promoters to have that mindset.
It is. And I was just thinking about when you were talking about comparing notes on trucks and employees and stuff. It's rare that you find a team or, like, say, an employee. When I'd say employee, I mean like track guy, whatever. It's hard to find one that won't be able to go work with another. You know what I mean? Like I've worked for Wagons at his shows. His shows usually go on a lot at the same time as Elliott's, so I'm usually booked up. But I mean, I've done Brian shows, Wagner's, obviously Elliott's, and there's a lot of people out there that work for different for the different groups as well. But yeah, and all the shows from a fan's perspective, I try to, at least one point during the weekend, I try to put myself in a fan's perspective, be like, either if it was a rough weekend, I try to see, okay, was it really that bad? Or am I focusing too hard on something? Was it really that bad? Or, where can we make it better? And all three of those shows, except for the odd time where there might be something that happens totally out of our control, like weather, all those shows, you can be happy at the end of the weekend that it was a good production and that it was something that you would have wanted to go to as a kid, basically, is what it comes down to.
I think that's a great way of looking at it. And, living my life now for over a decade in the civilian world, in the business I'm in, I go home frustrated or upset many a times, but everything's fine at work. Everything's good. An event I planned went well, or, an objective I had got met, but I'm still kind of ticked off because it wasn't as good as what I thought it could be. And I feel like I've absorbed that from working for people like Brian, where, not that you need to go home miserable because everything wasn't perfect, but just the standard you set for yourself, I feel like leads by example for your guys, your team. And we all kind of feel that same way. People are high fiving us after the show. God, that was the best show Beaumont's ever had. And you're like, if only you knew the shit we were saying on the radio to each other tonight. Cause no, this wasn't as good as it could have been, so I think the fact that, you hold yourself accountable and you hold yourself to such a high standard has set the tone for so many of us. But, another question I had for you before we kind of talk about, where Toughest is heading from here. Where do you see the industry from here moving forward in terms of sustaining itself, sustainability? Everything's getting more expensive. Some promoters like Monster Jam have abandoned crush cards virtually, especially at shows, in the same size building as you run. So, where do you see things kind of going from here, and how do we keep appealing to the next generation of young fans?
Well, I think there's a lot of issues going on right now. There's a lot of oversaturation going on. There are so many promoters out there, all competing for the same venues and the same markets and the same dollars. People only have so many dollars in their pocket to spend on entertainment. So when there's multiple monster truck shows in almost every market out there, it's gonna start to show its face if it hasn't already. So that's one issue that there is. But there's always a new batch of little kids coming up that are going to fall in love with monster trucks, whether they see Monster Jam on TV, whether they walk down the aisle at Walmart and see trucks with big tires on them. So there's a never-ending supply of new fans coming all the time. The things that these drivers are able to do with these trucks nowadays, and the amount of punishment that these trucks are able to take, it just is mind-blowing. It seems like every single weekend this winter, you will see videos from Monster Jam Stadium shows of insanity, stuff that you would not have ever thought would happen, and these guys are pulling it off. So there's a trickle down effect there, stuff that those guys figured out that they can do, that will eventually make its way into arenas, and then eventually the independents pick up on it and learn how to do it. And so there's a flow that happens there. So the tricks and stunts and stuff that these guys are able to do is incredible. So from that point, the sky's the limit. I mean, it's going to be a struggle for the little guys to find the markets and find the venues and be able to keep putting butts in the seats. But as far as monster trucks as a whole, I can't tell you how many times over the years people have told me, "Oh, I can't believe those are still a thing," or "I thought they'd be around for 10 years and die out." Well, that ain't the case. These things are going to be around for a long, long time. And as long as there's little kids that love trucks with big tires, I don't think we've got that much to worry about.
You brought up something there that kind of gives me another spin-off question, but how do you maintain venue loyalty if that's even a thing anymore? Because you bring a superior arena product, and some of the buildings I did with you have been taken over by, smaller production companies, maybe not doing as good a job, or even a bigger production company where we know the show's not as exciting as yours. But how do you maintain some kind of building loyalty in your key markets? I point to Beaumont as an example.
Yeah, that's getting to be very, very difficult, because even if the venue recognizes that you're bringing them a excellent product, at the end of the day, it all boils down to dollars. And all these venues have someone to answer to as far as revenue at the end of the year. So when they've got somebody knocking on their door that wants to bring a second monster truck show in June or something, do they want to say no? Yeah, they want to say no. Our venue or our market, can only support one good monster truck show a year. But when there's a check being slid across the table to rent the place, and you have to go back to your superior or your city council or whoever is overseeing your venue and tell them that you turned down revenue because you think it's not a good idea to have multiple shows of the same in the same market, you usually don't win that battle. And so they're going to let the other guy in, and all you do is dilute the market, and then it makes it a struggle for both shows to try to do well. So that's the saturation I was talking about a little earlier. So all you can do is the best you can do, and build these relationships and put on the best show possible. But it's just gonna keep getting more and more difficult the more and more shows that are out there happening.
I've found a lot of times in business that you bring that superior quality product, customer service, whatever it is, execution, and then somebody else comes along after you and brings whatever their interpretation of that is. It's inferior. Sometimes you just have to let a venue or a customer learn that lesson. And I think the fans, as long as your branding is good, your name recognition is good, your truck's recognition is good, which I know you have with Toughest, I think people will eventually migrate back to your product if you can keep it in front of them through your building, contracts and stuff like that. Because sometimes, as hard as it is to stomach, I would think a competitor coming in and taking a slice of your pie you've worked so hard for, it comes around. You know what I mean? If they're willing to do what it took to nab that spot from you, let's say, and then they underdeliver on it, and no doubt they've overpromised. When you bring your product back in, I think it can make you shine so much better. And I think it rewards the customer if they have some loyalty to Toughest. Do you feel like that at all?
Absolutely, I agree. In the long run, a quality product will win out. You're just going to have to figure out a way to weather the storm in between. So we'll see how it pans out. But I can't remember a time, at least in my monster truck career, that there has ever been so many shows going on any given weekend. I don't know what the total number is. Ross used to have a full yearly schedule of everything that he could find on his website, and I would scroll through that and just be like, my God, how are there even this many trucks out there to do this many shows? But there are, and I wish he was still doing that, because right now it would be incredible the amount of shows that are going on, not just in the States, but worldwide on any given weekend.
When we all watched the VHS, movie as a kid where Bigfoot goes to Australia, and they're showing B-roll footage of koalas and kangaroos and shit, and you're like, wow, look at that. Monster trucks made it to Australia.
Yep.
Now they're racing in, Dubai and the UAE and Kuwait and all across Europe, the whole Asian section of the world is getting shows across. Let's bring it on. You know what I mean? Like, if the Grand Tour went there, we can send a monster truck show there, but it's pretty wild to think about. Couple last things. Let's talk Monster Truck Hall of Fame real quick. We at OSMT are putting our 2 cents that no one wants to count behind Ron Bachmann and Jim Oldacre. This year, and I've started a poorly branded political campaign to support that. In fact, it might be one of the only things Bob Trent and I agree on, is that, God damn it, Ron Bachmann needs to be in the Hall of Fame. Any thoughts you have on our feelings about those guys?
Well, first of all, I don't even know that I'm on the committee this year. I haven't got the email yet or anything, but I'm with you guys. I've had a list that I compiled years ago. That was longer than what you could submit, and as people from the list have got inducted, I just drop them off and bump people up. Ron Bachmann is definitely on my list. I've not studied Jim Oldacre super hard as far as what his contributions and stuff were, so send me what you got, and I will definitely look that over and maybe add him to the list also. But it makes me feel old to see the list that I started with, and then the majority of them that are in the Hall of Fame. It's getting harder every year to try to come up with this list and whittle it down to the couple guys that we're able to recommend or nominate or whatever.
I'll send you what I have on Oldacre. I actually spent 3 months working with him on a bit of a biography piece last summer that I wrote and broke into 4 parts. So it'll probably take you 15 to 20 very long bathroom trips to finally get through reading it, because as we know, I'm long-winded. But I'll send you that, and I think it makes an excellent case for his involvement with diesel power, corporate sponsorship.
Speaking of Jim Oldacre.
Oh yeah, let's see it.
We got a model?
Oh, not just a model.
Oh, yeah. That is brilliant.
Is that one of the mini clods?
It is a mini clodbuster, yeah.
Yes.
It's called Lunchbox or something.
Yep.
Lunchbox.
To me, a lunchbox, yeah.
Yeah, but you can look at these mini clodbusters, and it's painfully obvious that they were based off of a real truck.
Yep.
So I just painted it orange, and I forget who helped me with the decals, but it turned out pretty cool.
We actually covered that in that piece with him. It was a funny story. He's like, all of a sudden those things start showing up on shelves, and people are like, why doesn't it say Rolling Thunder? He's like,
Yeah.
They never asked me. He's like, I'd have let them use it just for the exposure, and they
Absolutely.
never wanted to reach out to him about it.
Send me a case of them and use it all you want.
Yeah, and then the damn truck ends up living its life out in Japan at the very end, which is even crazier still. So,
Yeah.
well, I'll get you some information on that. But where's Toughest heading from here? I know you've wrapped up your indoor season. Do you have any outdoor stuff going on this year?
Yeah, we're done for the indoor season. The next Toughest show is in Lamar, Missouri, at the Stomping Grounds in July, and then West Plains, Missouri, that we've been going to forever, and then the last one will be at the Colorado State Fair in Pueblo. And then got some other ones sprinkled in there. We're doing a throwdown show in Salinas, California. For Virginia Beach is in 3 weeks, so we'll be playing in the sand for 3 days. And then Charlotte's mixed in there as well, and got a PBR stadium show out in Colorado with a big concert going with it. So lots of stuff on the plate.
Yeah, you're only going to be about 45 minutes from me, where you're doing the PBR show in Fort Collins, Colorado, right?
Yep.
At CSU.
Yep.
That's awesome. Yeah, we saw you landed that gig. PBR was affiliated with Cheyenne Frontier Days here in town, and then they went separate ways. However, that worked out. But we saw that, and that's going to be a pretty big show down there. So we wish you a lot of luck with that too. Where can folks that are not already following you on your social platforms and stuff, where can everybody find you guys at?
Oh, everything's at Toughest Monster Trucks. Or if you want to hear about the other shows, beach events for Virginia Beach, Charlotte Motor Speedway for Charlotte, obviously. I've got it my own website, dirtshows.com, www.dirtshows.com. It doesn't get updated very much, but it's got basic information about my company and whatnot on there.
That's awesome, man. Looker, do you have anything else before we get on out of here?
One thing I wanted to kind of connect the dot on earlier, Brian, when you were talking about working for George Carpenter, I think it's pretty cool that you do the beach show now, the Carpenter Cup, because that is one of the holy grail monster truck shows, not just running on the beach, because that's just such a cool event, but it is a grueling 4-show weekend, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you're running on sand at that level for 4 shows, it is unreally hard on the trucks and the drivers.
It's like doing 8 shows instead of 4 as far as wear and tear on the equipment. Not to mention these guys just got done running full first quarter,
Right.
So if you're not on your game, the Virginia Beach weekend is brutal. And Looker, you're right. George Carpenter, along with Wildwood, he was the mastermind of both of those shows. So when he got to the age where he didn't want to do them anymore, he passed it on to Mike West. And then Mike West passed it on to me. And I've been doing it since, 2012 or something, I think. Charlotte was a similar thing. Monster Jam did Charlotte the first year. I think it happened at the dirt track after the big one at the big track. They did the dirt track, I think, once. And then Rich Schaefer took it over through contacts that he knew or whatever. And he did it for a long time, and I was there most of the time with him building that track. And then when he went to work for NHRA, he passed it on down to me. So I'm glad to be able to carry on the history of some of these bigger, cooler shows and keep the legacy going on, if that's what you want to call it. But we have fun with those three for sure.
Definitely.
I think there's only just a handful of events in monster trucks currently that you could label as crown jewel events, and those are two of them right there. I mean, Charlotte is Charlotte, and the beach is like our Darlington. It's too tough to tame. It's got to be one of the hardest shows out there. I mean, you better tear your truck down before the show, make sure it's ready to put up with it, but you pretty much have to tear it down after that show to just get the sand out of everything.
Yeah, it's brutal, and people. I always joke because I'll take somebody to the beach for the first time, and it'll be Sunday night at 6:00, and everybody's just about packed up, and they're like, "Don't ever call me for this show again. I want nothing to do with this." And then it takes about 3 months, and I'll get a text or a call like, "Hey, you got me in the beach next year, right?" I'm like, no, you said lose your phone number. Don't ever call you for this show again. Oh, it wasn't that bad. I'll do it again. I'm like, okay. But you said don't ever call you again. Just remember that. You called me, you want it back again. So it's a love-hate relationship with the beach for sure, because there is no place like it that you can run a monster truck. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you're looking from the hotels out towards the water or the few guys that get to go out to the water and look back. The view is incredible either way, because a monster truck does not belong in that setting doing the things that it's doing. It's just wild.
That's my favorite thing about the imagery from that event. Like we talked about it a few episodes ago about monster trucks performing in places that they shouldn't be, and just how cool it is. It's so stinking cool. But well, Brian, we can't thank you enough for spending your time with us here on Bottom Dead Center. We love what you're doing out there. Obviously, Looker and I have been huge fans of what you do for a long time, especially when you paid us for it. That's awesome. We love that part. But no, look forward to catching up to you at one of your shows. I know you come pretty close to where I'm at. We just haven't aligned schedules lately, but look forward to seeing you. And then to all our fans out there watching the Bottom Dead Center, thank you for tuning into this kind of special interview episode. Support us on Instagram, YouTube, at OSMT75 on YouTube, at OSMT_1975 on Instagram, and of course, osmt.myspreadshop.com is home to all of our ridiculously silly merchandise that we've thrown together. I don't know if you've seen any of that, Brian, but there's a camel tour shirt on there that you'd probably look pretty good in.
I saw Matt Stoltz wearing that in, I can't remember if it's Youngstown or Wheeling, but
Wheeling, yeah.
I saw it going down the hallway, and I thought, oh yeah, that's awesome. I need one of those.
Awesome. Well, by the time fans are listening to this, we'll have dropped a Coors Extra Gold 1990 tour shirt on the old OSMT. Yeah, that's Coors, man. And yeah, and I work for a Coors wholesaler, and I know what I can't get away with, so I had to modify it to Coors, if you know what I mean. But when you see it, you'll know it, you'll hear it. It'll take you back and make you want to pop in Monster Mania on VHS.
Dave's retired now. He retired a couple years ago. But he doesn't live too far from Lamar, where the stomping grounds is, and I tried to get him to. Just do it for me, one show. Just what do you say, Chevrolet? Just show up, do it, and I won't ever bother you again. And he's like, no, man, if I did it for you, I'd have to do it for all these other guys that I worked for all these years. And I'm like, damn. Well,
that's the only thing uglier than my mother-in-law on both ends, I believe, was a slogan from Dave Bennett. But all right, well, Matt.
The only
thing bigger. That's right, on both ends. Yeah, that's right. Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you both for your time again. Matt Looker, great to have you back on the show. I'm Kyle Doyle, OSMT founder. That's Brian Manson from Toughest Monster Truck Tour and DirtShows.com. Thanks again, Brian, and thanks to all you for watching and listening out there. We'll see you guys next time on Bottom Dead Center.
See you, everybody.
Thanks.